All you want is to live quietly as a son-in-law, keeping close to your family's rising empress-to-be. However, your wife's personal maid drugs you, and then renders you unconscious. She binds you to your sister-in-law's bed, framing you, and your cultivation ultimately gets destroyed. You're cast into the dungeon, certain your name is ruined, and then you'll be cast out of the family. Yet when your wife discovers the truth, she does not look down on you in the slightest. Instead of that, she stands steadfastly before your eyes in order to shield you. And then misfortune transforms into fortune. You activates a miraculous hammer with a single gentle strike, and then it hands you heaven-tier techniques. You eat top-grade spirit pills as if they were candy. However, at this very moment, with your cultivation destroyed, your consciousness begins to fade. And then in your final moment before losing consciousness entirely, something changes the plane. Wooden hammer pendant on your chest all of a sudden begins to glow. It shoots by itself directly into your stomach, driving itself into your shattered core. That pain almost causes you to cry out in pain. However, immediately after, an indescribable wave of power detonates throughout your body in a flash. The dungeon scene before your eyes disappears entirely. Where it once stood emerges a mysterious realm, surrounded by mist and radiant light. In the middle hovers an enormous crystal tower. Radiating a brilliant glow right then, a voice suddenly speaks, identifying itself as the hammer spirit of the divine hammer. It reveals to you an unbelievable truth. That wooden hammer pendant was never merely an object in the slightest. It's the divine hammer. And then it has now merged with your body. It has turned into your soul companion, and then you've now become its ninth master. At first, you do not believe it in the slightest. After all, on the soul heaven continent, what makes a soul cultivator? A soul cultivator is forming a soul companion. You had only just formed half of one. When Marcus Yun destroyed your core with a single strike, even that unfinished form scattered. Yet now the hammer spirit tells you your soul companion hasn't just come back. It's been replaced entirely by the divine hammer. When you instinctively turn your senses inward, you freeze your body, which should be a ruin, is entirely whole again. Your meridians, flesh and core, look like they've been rebuilt from scratch. Not a trace of damage remains. And then inside your stomach, there's now a small wooden hammer glowing faintly. Only now do you finally believe it. However, the real shock is still coming. The hammer spirit tells you this crystal tower is the sacred tower, a treasure vault left by the divine hammer's original forger. The tower has 5 levels, and then the higher you go, the rarer the treasures. As the new master, you now have one chance to enter the first level. Before you're able to ask anything, the door to the first level transforms into a swirling vortex. An enormous force pulls you straight in. After the world spins around you, you land inside a golden, resplendent hall. Looking around, the hall is packed wall to wall with crystal eggs. The hammer spirit's voice suddenly speaks. The rule for the first level is simple. It's called timed egg smashing. You've 3 minutes to smash open any crystal egg. With a divine hammer, half the eggs hold treasure. Half are empty. Hitting treasure adds luck points. Hitting an empty egg deducts luck points. As long as your final luck points are positive, you're able to keep whatever treasure you've broken out. However, if your luck points stay negative, those treasures only go toward paying off debt. You're still fuzzy on the rules. However, the hammer spirit's next line makes your face go dark. The previous master's luck was so bad that he left, owing a luck point debt by the rules. That debt now falls entirely on you. Your starting luck points are negative 290. At this very moment, you genuinely want to drag your predecessor out and then give him a beating. However, there's no time to curse anyone. The countdown above your head is already ticking. You brace yourself, grab the divine hammer, and then smash it into the nearest crystal egg. Your very first hit is an empty egg. 10 more luck points gone. You've now become at negative 300. Your mouth twitches, but there's no time to sulk. You keep swinging, the second egg shatters open. A purple glow rises from it. It's a bottle of grade 6 spirit pills. The purple soul pill, your eyes go wide instantly. In a place like Cloud Driver City, forget grade 6 spirit pills. Even the lowest grade spirit pill is already a rare stroke of luck to find. And then yet this treasure, one that would drive countless people wild, only lingers before your eyes for a single instant. Before the hammer spirit deducts 20 luck points and then takes it away, the pills are gone just like that. Your heart is bleeding, but before you're able to recover, your third swing breaks out. A golden glow A scroll shining with radiant light rises up. The hammer spirit says only 4 words. Heaven tier technique, the heavenly thunder art. This time you actually stop breathing. If grade 6 spirit pills were already absurdly precious, then this heaven tier technique is something that could stir up storms across the entire Azure Empire. A treasure so heavy that even a spirit tier technique alone could be a clan's guarded heirloom, let alone a heaven tier 1. And then yet once again, all you're able to do is watch helplessly as it dissolves into light, paying off 200 of your luck points, right? Then you understand this first level isn't a treasure vault in the slightest. It's clearly designed to make you drool over treasure while paying off someone else's debt. However, the worse it gets, the harder you swing, because you've already realized if you're able to push your luck points positive, all of this can actually become yours. So for the rest of the time, you swing the hammer like a madman. Empty egg, empty egg. Empty egg mixed in with grade 6 spirit pills. Grade to soul weapons and rare treasures. Every single one thrills you first, then guts you every time you hit an empty egg. You want to reach back through time and then curse out your predecessor's entire bloodline, especially when the blue soul short sword, a grade D soul weapon, comes out. You nearly have a heart attack all over again. Across the entire Azure Empire, a soul weapon like this might not exist in more than a handful, and then yet it only pays off 60 luck points for you. Time is running faster now. Your heart tightens more and more. With 10 seconds left, your luck points are still negative 60. With 5 seconds left on the clock, you're nearly out of hope. With one final swing left in you, you slam the hammer down on the egg before your eyes. At that exact moment, the entire hall is all of a sudden bathed in golden light, a ball of crackling electric light, far brighter than any treasure before. It slowly rises from the egg. For the first time, the hammer spirit's voice turns deadly serious. What you've broken out is the thunder god's essence. You're stunned. You've only ever seen fragments about something like this in ancient texts. It's a soul power essence and a thunder attribute, one at that so precious that even a heaven tier technique isn't fit to be mentioned in the same breath. However, right then the countdown hit 0, and then the hammer spirit gives you 2 choices. Either use the thunder god's essence to clear your debt and then push your luck points positive, or take it with you outright, keeping your luck points at negative 60. There's no question here. You practically shout your answer. I want it with that. The trial ends carrying negative 60 luck points. You were sent back to the divine hammer's space, yet this time far from losing out. You've won big, the hammer spirit tells you. The thunder god's essence has already been absorbed by the hammer, and then it's now reshaping your physique. You quickly turn your awareness inward. Sure enough, the small, wooden hammer is releasing streams of electric current, spreading through every limb and bone in your body. The hammer spirit then speaks the name of this new physique. The thunder god physique made up of 5 stages. If perfected, it could even draw down endless heavenly thunder. Hearing this, the way you look at the sacred tower changes entirely. You once thought this was just a lucky trump card that saved your life. Only now do you realize it's an inexhaustible mountain of treasure. You immediately ask, when you're able to enter the sacred tower again. The hammer spirit answers plainly, once you master the divine hammer technique, you'll earn another chance. However, a problem follows right behind that. The divine hammer technique can only be properly cultivated once you reach the Emperor Soul Realm. The Emperor Soul Realm is a level that makes one a top-tier power across the whole Azure Empire. At this very moment, forget the Emperor Soul Realm. You're not even sure you'll crawl out of this dungeon alive, and yet with the Thunder God physique now in you. For the first time, that goal doesn't feel impossibly far away. However, before you're able to dream any further, the hammer spirit all of a sudden warns you. Someone is approaching. You're about to be sent out of the hammer space. In the next instant, the scene shifts and you're back lying in that damp, dark dungeon. Footsteps follow immediately afterward. It's Violet the moment you notice her. Your eyes turn cold. Because if she hadn't drugged you and set the trap, you'd never be in this state. And then yet she shows not a shred of guilt. Instead of that, she stands outside the cell door, smiling and says in a mocking tone, "Kai, I've come to see you." You say nothing, just stare coldly at her. Seeing this, Violet's smile turns even more contemptuous, as if she came just to savor your misery. She even taunts you're finally not that stupid. However, you quickly sense something's off. A maid who did what she did wouldn't be strolling into a dungeon. She'd be fleeing. Something is very wrong here. Sure enough, the next second, she pulls out a key and unlocks the cell door. That's when you notice the dungeon guard already lying, knocked out in the hallway, foaming at the mouth, clearly poisoned once Violet steps inside. She doesn't bother wasting words. She tells you plainly, she's here to send you to your death. A dagger flashes and drives straight at your chest. Luckily, though, your strength hasn't returned. The divine hammer has already healed your injuries. Your instincts still work. You roll aside just in time to dodge. You grab her wrist immediately afterward, trying to wrench the blade away. However, the moment you clash, you realize something's wrong. Violet is no ordinary maid. She's a soul cultivator at this very moment. The drug hasn't worn off and your strength is lacking. Her soul power surges and then forces your hand off her wrist. Her face twists savagely as she swings the dagger again, determined to overpower you here and now. If this were the old you, this fight would be lost already. However, you're not that person anymore, not the one whose core was just destroyed. The moment you catch her wrist for the second time, you make a decision, forcibly summoning the thunder, God's essence still reshaping inside you. A sheet of golden lightning explodes from your palm. It sweeps up her arm and floods through her whole body. Even Violet's scream breaks into a different pitch. The lightning rages wildly inside her. For a full half-minute, by the time the dagger clatters to the ground, her whole body has gone limp. All that's left are her wide, terrified eyes fixed on you. It's as if even as she loses consciousness, she can't understand how someone who should be broken could wield such terrifying power. However, you're not unscathed either. Forcing power out mid-transformation triggers instant backlash. The instant Violet collapses, you cough up blood and crash to the ground yourself. Thankfully, the backlash isn't fatal. It just slows the Thunder God physique transformation. However, even so, you've no time for regret. Because if you hadn't struck, you'd be dead. And then who ordered Violet to silence you like this? You already have a fairly good guess about who's behind it. Most likely Marcus Yun and his sister Scarlet Yun. Thinking of this, the killing intent in your eyes is almost impossible to hold back. And then right then, new footsteps sound from the hallway. Your chest tightens, you look up instantly. And then it's none other than Celine Yun. The moment you notice her, your tense nerves finally ease a little. She's still dressed in white, her eyes calm and cool, standing in this dark dungeon like untouched moonlight. She glances at you first, then notices Violet, unconscious against the wall, and then the dagger fallen beside her. What happened here, she asks. You answer calmly, she came to kill me. Celine falls silent for a moment, then says just 2 words, I'm sorry. You shake your head, saying it isn't her fault. However, she doesn't offer any explanation, doesn't defend anyone either. She just asks if you've the strength to stand. You give her a helpless look, and then she understands immediately. The next second, she bends down and lifts you onto her back. Even you're caught off guard. She simply says coolly, no need to say anything, and then carries you step by step out of the dungeon. Leaning against her back, you breathe in the faint scent of her hair, feeling the unshakable protection underneath that cold exterior. And then something in your chest stirs, a sense of security you've never felt before. You once thought that once this disgrace fell on you, the Yun family would abandon you entirely. Yet the one who stepped up in order to shield you is this very wife of yours, someone you've always treated with polite distance and few words. Yet when she carries you out of the dungeon, the world's hostility hits you head-on. A crowd is already gathered outside, and then every eye lands on you at once. Disgust and rage go barely hidden. Someone calls you worse than a beast. Someone says you deserve harsh punishment. Someone else urges Celine to drop you, this piece of trash, and leave you behind. Each insult is uglier than the last, as if they want to drown you in spit. Your face darkens, but Celine simply says flatly, ignore them. That one line is enough. Because you realize she believes you. At least, she carries you all the way back to your chamber, sets you down on the bed, and then leaves behind a bottle of spirit elixir. She tells you the one who ordered your release was the Yin Patriarch. She's simply following orders. And then this elixir was granted by the Patriarch himself, which might help with your injuries. Once she says this, she turns and leaves. Still no wasted words. This is simply how the two of you've always been, with each other, Your marriage to Celine was arranged by your elders. From the start, your grandfather had raised you together. Just the two of you, but for reasons never explained. He had no choice, however, to entrust you to the Yun patriarch, arranging for you to marry into the Yun family. Celine, too, had only married under her own grandfather's orders. There was never love between you. However, there was never resentment either, at most a cool distance. A polite formality, and yet this time, when everyone else doubted you, she was the one who carried you out of that dungeon, with her own hands looking at the elixir on the table. Warmth still stirs in your chest, though you realize full well this potion should do little for a shattered core. However, things are different now. Your core has already been repaired by the divine hammer. What really matters isn't this bottle in the slightest. However, the thunder god's essence still not fully absorbed inside you. So over the next 3 days, you ignore the rumors outside and then focus entirely on absorbing the essence still lingering in your body. 3 days pass in a blink as morning sunlight spills into your chamber. You open your eyes to find electricity, already crackling and flowing across your palm. The thunder god physique's reshaping is complete. And then even more surprising thanks to this transformation, and then the essence feeding back into you. Your cultivation level has surged. You've jumped straight from great perfection of the soul realm to its peak. This kind of leap is almost unheard of. At this very moment, you're able to clearly feel endless rolling through your body. The little wooden hammer rests quietly in your core, surrounded by threads of lightning. It looks plain, and yet what it hides inside is a fate-altering fortune beyond imagination. You're able to help thinking of your grandfather again. This pendant was the last thing he left you. Before he was gone, you once thought it was just a keepsake. Only now, do you realize just how much weight it truly carried? What exactly your grandfather left you, you still don't know, but you realize one thing for certain. From this moment on, your fate has entirely turned around. Right? Right then, a knock sounds at the door. It's Yun Leo. He's come on the order of Grand Elder Yun to deliver a message that since you're injured, you do not need to attend today's clan tournament. The Grand Elder will withdraw on your behalf. You freeze for a moment, then all of a sudden remember. Today is the Yun family's clan tournament, and then this tournament decides who qualifies for the upper sec selection in Cloud Driver City. The upper sec selection happens once every 3 years. And then it's the chance countless young cultivators dream of. One leap that could change everything. Passing means entering one of the Azure Empire's truly powerful sects, gaining resources, and then a future far beyond what any family could offer. As a cultivation clan of Cloud Driver City, the Yun family holds a small number of guaranteed slots. So the tournament's importance goes without saying, and then you had already signed up half a month ago. With everything that's happened these past few days, you'd entirely forgotten. The moment it hits you, you do not hesitate in the slightest. You bolt straight out the door. You ask which way the training grounds are, and then sprint there without stopping. Yun Leo stands frozen, watching your figure race off at astonishing speed. He's entirely stunned. Wasn't your cultivation supposed to be destroyed? This speed, this movement, nothing like a broken man. Meanwhile, at the Yun family's training grounds, the clan tournament is already in full swing. On stage, Scarlet Yun, dressed in red, blasts her opponent Yun, and then off the arena with a single move. Cheers erupt at once, everyone praising her as truly deserving of her reputation as one of the Yun family's 2 most gifted daughters, certain to earn an upper sec slot. Hearing all this praise, her lips curl up in a smile she can't hold back. Then her gaze shifts, landing on Celine standing under the willow tree by the arena, and she shoots her a provocative look. However, Celine's expression stays perfectly flat, as if she isn't even worth noticing. This makes Scarlet grit her teeth privately. However, thinking of how you were disgraced just days ago, your core supposedly destroyed, some of her irritation fades. And then right then, the middle-aged official presiding over the tournament flips open the registry and calls out the next match. Yuntao versus Kai. The moment the name lands, the arena goes quiet. Then jeers erupt in everyone's eyes. You not anymore belong here in the slightest. Someone says, you've been destroyed and surely won't dare show up. Someone else curses through gritted teeth, calling you filth who defiled Scarlet Yun on the arena. Yuntao has already taken his stance. He waits and waits, but there's no sign of you. Your name is called once, no answer called again. Still nothing. Murmurs spread across the crowd, growing louder on the high platform. Grand Elder Yun finally clears his throat. He speaks up on your behalf, saying you're recovering from injury at home, and then that for this match he will withdraw for you. Hearing this, everyone's face turns to a look of course. The official prepares to declare Yun Tao the winner. However, right then a voice all of a sudden rings out from beyond the training grounds. Wait, everyone turns their heads at once. The next second, a figure comes sprinting down the stone path, moving at astonishing speed. It reaches the center of everyone's view in a blink. It's you in that instant. Jeers rise up again across the arena, even louder than before on the high platform. Grand Elder Yun's brow furrows. Marcus and Scarlet both show surprise. Even Celine, who stayed calm the whole time under the willow, finally lets a flicker of surprise cross her eyes. Around the training ground, someone can't help but curse out loud. This filth actually dares to show up after doing something so vile. And then he still dares to appear in public. How thick-skinned can he be? Get out of here, trash. The insults explode across the grounds all at once. However, you act like you haven't heard a word. You climb onto the stage quickly, and then cup your hands toward the official. Sorry I'm late. The official instinctively glances up at the Yun family, elders on the balcony above. Grand Elder Yun's face darkens slightly, and then just as he opens his mouth, the patriarch beside him waves a hand. First he says calmly, since he's here. Let the match continue. With that said, Grand Elder Yun has no choice but to swallow his words. So the match proceeds. Yun Tao, standing across from you, already despised you. And then now his face is pure ice. He's always been infatuated with Scarlet. And then now, seizing the chance, he's eager to teach you a harsh lesson for her sake. The next second, white soul power surges around his fist. And then his whole body lunges at you, cursing you as trash, and then vowing to make an example of you for Scarlet. The crowd immediately joins in, egging him on. Yun Tao, hit him hard. This trash is done for. How dare he touch Lady Scarlet? He deserves everything he gets. However, the jeers barely have time to build before they cut off entirely. Yun Tao's fist has barely reached you when you simply raise a hand to meet it. After a single dull thud, Yun Tao is sent flying off the stage like a kite with its string cut. He slams hard onto the ground, screaming in pain. The entire arena falls silent in a flash, followed immediately by an uproar. No one expected that you, the man everyone had written off as ruined, would defeat Yun Tao with a single effortless strike. Impossible. Wasn't his core supposed to be shattered? Does that look like a broken man to you? Up on the balcony, the Yun family elders are stunned too. Just 3 days ago, Marcus said with his own mouth that he had personally shattered your core. And then precisely because of that, the Yun elders had assumed that even if something was off about the whole affair, you had already paid a heavy enough price. However, now a man with a shattered core has just knocked out a soul realm cultivator. With one blow, Grand Elder Yun freezes for a moment. Then a strange glint emerges in his eyes. He can't help glancing at Second Elder Yun, and then remarks meaningfully, seems like, my son-in-law has quite the knack for rising from ruin. Come to think of it, we should thank certain people for that. Second Elder Yun's face turns ugly at once. You pay none of it any mind. Simply looking calmly at the official presiding over the match, can you announce it now? The official snaps back to attention and then calls out loudly, Kai wins. You turn and step off the stage, walking straight towards Celine under the willow tree. She looks at you, a trace of uncertainty, breaking through her usual coolness. You've recovered, you nod casually, crediting it to the spirit elixir. I guess so, that elixir helped a lot. Celine gives you a look, clearly not buying it. After all, no matter how precious an elixir might be, it couldn't possibly restore an entirely shattered core. Yet she doesn't press the question, just nods lightly, and then turns her attention back to the stage. You lean against the willow too, watching the arena, but the moment you look up, your eyes lock with Marcus's from across the field. His gaze is cold and menacing, coiling toward you like a snake. You look back calmly, your own eyes just as cold. You realize full well this clan tournament isn't just about the upper sex slot. For you, it's about Marcus and Scarlet, too. How they trampled you 3 days ago. That's a debt you won't let slide. So the two of you stare each other down across the crowd, neither willing to look away first. The first round wraps up quickly, and then the second round's draw begins immediately afterward. The official reaches into the draw tube and then pulls out 2 wooden slips. He reads aloud first match. Marcus Yun versus Kai the moment the name is called. The arena goes still for a beat, then instantly erupts, because everyone knows this is no ordinary duel. It's the 2 figures at the center of that scandal. A few days ago, finally about to face each other head-on. Marcus slowly lifts his head, shooting you a cold, mocking smile. What a coincidence, you say? Nothing but your hand, hidden beneath your sleeve, slowly clenches into a fist. Faint threads of golden lightning quietly crackle between your fingers. Just as you step toward the stage, Celine all of a sudden speaks. You pause. Turning back to look at her, she's quiet for a moment, then finally says just 2 words. Be careful, simple as it gets. And then yet those 2 words alone make something warm stir in your chest. You give her a nod, then turn away, all warmth vanishing from your eyes, leaving nothing but bone-deep cold. Aim squarely at Marcus up on the balcony. Grand Elder Yun's expression is grim. In his view, this draw is almost certainly rigged. After all, he knows exactly what Marcus is capable of. Peak of the Soul Realm, 1 step away from the Soul Sovereign Realm, and then the acknowledged #1 talent of the Yun family. Even if you've recovered, you shouldn't be facing an opponent like this so early. So he sends a soul power message directly. Kai forfeit. You hear it, but only glance up at him briefly, before shaking your head slightly. Forfeit, no chance. You came here today specifically for Marcus. Before Grand Elder Yun can urge you again, the official presiding over the match waves a hand and then announces the start. Marcus had planned to mock you a bit more first. However, before he can get a word out, you're already moving, exploding forward like a charging leopard at blinding speed. Your fist drives straight for his face. Marcus's expression shifts slightly, clearly not expecting you to strike first. He quickly twists aside and pulls back, narrowly avoiding it. However, the instant he steadies his footing, you've already turned and closed in again, your lightning-wrapped fist crashing forward once more. Marcus hastily raises an arm to block. However, the impact still sends him stumbling backward until he barely stops himself at the stage's edge. The whole crowd is shocked. After all, that's Marcus Yun, the Yun family's #1 talent, someone who normally walks over his peers without contest, and here he is being overwhelmed the moment the fight starts. Seems I really did underestimate this piece of trash. Marcus scoffs coldly, soul power surging violently around him. The next second, a pale silver sword shadow slowly materializes above his head, a soul companion and a sword soul at that. The moment it emerges, the crowd bursts into gasps. Across Cloud Driver City, a sword soul ranks among the most outstanding kinds of soul companions. The Lin family onlookers stare at the silver blade in excitement, already picturing Marcus turning the fight around. On the balcony, even the patriarch's eyes widened slightly, nodding in approval. That's a fine sword soul. Second Elder Yun finally cracks a smile too, shooting a deliberate glance at Grand Elder Yun, the meaning unmistakable. However, if Marcus has a soul companion, why wouldn't you the next second? Soul power surges around you just the same, and then a hazy shape slowly rises above your head. Yet when it fully takes form, not just the crowd below. However, every elder on the balcony freezes as well, because your soul companion is a tiny wooden hammer, almost laughably small for a moment. The whole arena falls silent, then erupts into laughter. That's supposed to be a soul companion? I bet even a kid's toy would be bigger. That's hilarious. That's what he actually formed. Second Elder Yun lets out a scornful laugh outright. That counts as a soul companion. Even Grand Elder Yun's expression stiffens for a moment. However, you act as if you haven't heard a single word of the mockery, standing quietly, your expression flat, almost cold. Seeing this, Marcus sneers even harder. This junk hammer wants to compare with my sword soul. With that, he plants his foot and his whole body surges forward. Blade first, his sword soul, fusing instantly with his strike into a devastating slash aimed straight at your head. The force so sharp it seems to split the air, making it hum some of the more faint-hearted onlookers. instinctively squeeze their eyes shut, expecting to see you cut down brutally. In the next instant, on the balcony, Grand Elder Yun shouts urgently, through soul transmission dodge. However, you do not move in the slightest. Only when the blade closes to less than half a foot from your head do you finally speak two calm words enough. The next instant, something changes. The small hammer above your head, once no bigger than a palm, all of a sudden expands, growing dozens of times larger in a flash, becoming an enormous hammer over 2 meters long. You grip it steadily with one hand, holding it across your body. With a resounding clang, the sword soul slash lands on the hammer's head, and then is brought to a dead stop. Marcus's pupils contract sharply, and then before he can react, you've already tightened your grip, lightning surging like a tide around it. Now it's my turn the instant those words land. You step forward, raising the enormous hammer high, reeved in lightning thunderstrike. With a single sweeping blow, the air itself seems to detonate. Golden lightning wrapped around raw force sends Marcus flying through the air, sparks scattering and thunder crackling as he's backward tumbling like a torn rag. He slams down off the stage, hitting the ground, already scorched black from head to toe, his breathing unsteady, his life in doubt. Total silence falls over the arena. No one expected this outcome. Not Marcus crushing you. However, you sending Marcus flying with a single strike. A long moment passes before a shrill scream shatters the silence. Impossible. This is impossible. Scarlet Yun stands below the stage, all color draining from her face instantly. She rubs her eyes frantically, refusing to believe that the man who was trampled underfoot by her and her brother just 3 days ago, a broken-down son-in-law, has just now in front of everyone crushed the Yun family's #1 talent with a single blow on the balcony. Second Elder Yun jumps to his feet, losing composure entirely, his face grim beyond words. Grand Elder Yun, meanwhile, freezes for a moment first, then breaks into pure delight, unable to hide his smile. What's so impossible about it? A fine sword soul or not, it only took my son-in-law 1 strike. As he says this, he deliberately stresses the words, my son-in-law. Second Elder Yun has no time to argue back. He leaps straight off the balcony, rushing to Marcus's side to check his wounds. What he finds turns his whole face pale. Marcus looks merely gravely injured on the surface. However, one probe tells him his son's insides have already been torn apart by a savage force of lightning, his breath as faint as a candle in the wind. He snaps his head up, glaring at you with fury. You bastard, how dare you go this hard? You just look at him coldly, not even bothering to explain, turning to step off the stage. Too hard 3 days ago. When Marcus shattered your core, no one called that too hard. However, Second Elder Yun is beyond furious. The pressure of a soul, sovereign realm cultivator erupts on the spot, bearing straight down on you. Luckily, Grand Elder Yun is already dropping down from the balcony, blocking your path, his eyes cold on Second Elder Yun. Yunlingguang, have you no shame in the slightest, interfering in a match between juniors? The pressure from 2 souls, sovereign realm powerhouses collides instantly, and then the color drains from the faces of the young cultivators watching. Just as things threaten to spiral out of control, the patriarch finally speaks enough. The aged but commanding shout lands, and then both men's pressure drops away. At the same instant, the patriarch scolds them coldly. Do you two want the entire younger generation to watch this whole family become a joke only then? The Grand Elder Yun and then Second Elder Yun both lower their heads. The one man's face is dark as iron, and then the other's lips just won't stop curling upward because Grand Elder Yun knows full well that single strike of yours didn't just win a match. It publicly crushed Second Elder Yun standing in front of everyone. Many in the family once believed Second Elder Yun held the stronger hand in the next generation, giving him real odds in the succession dispute. However, now with Marcus beaten this badly in public, that advantage has all but vanished. And then you realize full well that single strike might leave Marcus alive on the surface, but he's already lost everything that once made him what he was. Your blow didn't just shatter his body. It drove the Thunder God physique power directly into him. Even if he clings to life in the end, he'll likely spend the rest of his days bedridden, barely surviving. And then this is only the interest on the debt. The official finally finds his voice again, announcing with visible difficulty, Kai wins this time. No one in the crowd dares to insult you so easily. The rest of the matches continue. When you return to the willow tree, the way Celine looks at you has finally changed. From before surprise, shock, relief, and then even a trace of guilt. So faint it's barely noticeable. She'd actually suspected the truth for a while now. 3 days ago in the dungeon, when Violet collapsed before your eyes, traces of soul power still lingered in the air. If your cultivation had truly been destroyed, how could you've killed a soul cultivator, made in return? Now that suspicion has been fully confirmed. She looks at you and softly says, "Congratulations." You smile, you too. Good luck out there right then. The second round of matches begins, and then among those stepping onto the stage is Celine herself. Her opponent is just an ordinary member of the Yun clan, never a real threat to her. Within just a few moves, she ends the fight cleanly and decisively, winning without breaking a sweat. You stand under the tree, giving her an unreserved thumbs up. Impressive, Celine glances at you, still saying nothing. However, the moment she turns her head away, her lips curl up ever so slightly. The rest of the tournament passes without much drama. Both you and Celine secure your upper sex selection slots. Without trouble, 3 others also qualify successfully, one of them being Scarlet Yun. You'd actually hoped to deal with her on stage too. However, the draw never put you against each other. Once the tournament ends, you do not linger, exchanging only a quick word with Celine before hurrying back to your quarters. Because you've already noticed the divine hammer in your core has been acting strangely. Ever since your fight with Marcus, back in your chamber, you summon the hammer at once. The small wooden hammer, once perfectly quiet, is now flickering with light, its body humming steadily as if brewing for something. You quickly ask the hammer spirit about it. The hammer spirit answers right away. The divine hammer is leveling up. Only now do you truly grasp just how much more complex this whole thing is than you thought. The hammer you've activated so far is only stage 1. Its early form, the divine hammer, has 5 stages in total, each split into 3 sub-levels early. Minor and great perfection. As its wielder grows stronger and then the hammer sees battle, it grows in turn every time it levels up. Its power increases and new abilities unlock as well. As for how long each level takes to reach stage 1, typically takes 2 to 3 days. Hearing this, your anticipation grows even more. So for the next 2 days, you simply don't go anywhere in the slightest, staying in your room to cultivate, quietly, waiting for the hammer to finish its transformation. 2 days pass in a blink. As the first ray of morning sunlight enters your room, your body all of a sudden shudders, and then the next second, the divine hammer shoots out by itself, hovering before your eyes compared to 2 days ago. The most obvious change is its size. It's grown from finger size to nearly the size of a fist. While you're wondering what's changed after the level up the hammer, Spirit tells you to focus and feel it closely. You settle your mind, and in the next moment, 2 streams of information flood into your head at once. The first ability is called Thunder Strike. This ability is simple and utterly ruthless. It draws in the thunder attribute, energy within your body, then unleashes it through the hammer, amplifying its thunderous force to 3 times the original power. In other words, this ability exists purely to amplify the destructive force of your thunder, God physique. The second ability is called Forge. Seeing that word, you're both puzzled for a moment until the hammer spirit explains, and then only then do you truly understand just how absurd this ability really is. As long as you provide the right materials, the hammer can act like a master craftsman, forging weapons for you and randomly. It can even produce martial weapons, or even soul weapons. Your first reaction is disbelief, wondering if you heard wrong. You realize full well that on the Soul Heaven continent, master craftsmen are an extraordinarily rare profession. Anyone who can forge martial weapons already lives comfortably wherever they go. Anyone capable of forging soul weapons is rare, to the point of terrifying. And then yet the hammer spirit tells you that at the lowest level of the forge ability, it only needs 3 spirit stones to guarantee a successful forge. The chance of producing a soul weapon is still low. However, it's not 3 spirit stones guarantee success, with a real chance of a soul weapon on top. Hearing this, you sit bolt upright on the bed, your eyes lighting up instantly. You realize exactly what this means. A low-grade martial weapon sells for 200 gold coins. On the market, roughly 20 spirit stones worth. And then if you only need 3 spirit stones to forge one, the profit margin is absolutely absurd. The moment this sinks in, you're able to sit still any longer. You immediately dig out the spirit stones you're carrying, pull out 3, set them on the table, and call out forge. The divine hammer bursts with light, instantly hovering over the spirit stones, striking them with rapid, precise blows. The 3 stones quickly melt into liquid. Then under the hammer's relentless, continuous strikes, they take shape rapidly. Moments later, the first finished piece emerges, a sharp dagger, a low-grade martial weapon. You grip the dagger and channel soul power into it. A light swing shows its edge is real. Once confirmed, the grin on your face is nearly impossible to hide. With 1 success under your belt, you're not about to stop soon. A second, then a 3rd piece rolls out in quick succession. In barely 15 minutes, you've poured all 15 spirit stones you had into forging. In the end, you walk away with 5 martial weapons, 4 of them low-grade. However, the real surprise is a silver short blade, a mid-grade martial weapon. That single piece alone is worth at least 1,000 gold coins. Weighing the weapons in your hands, your breathing quickens with excitement, because this isn't just a handful of weapons. It's a snowballing path to real wealth. Sell the weapons for spirit stones. Use those stones to forge more and sell those in turn. As long as you've a reliable outlet, your cultivation resource problems could solve themselves without hesitation. You wrap up all 5 weapons in cloth and then head straight out the door. Meanwhile, back at Second Elder Yun's residence, the atmosphere has turned into unbearably tense. In his chamber, Marcus lies bandaged like a critically ill patient, his breath growing fainter by the hour. Several healers have been brought in one after another. However, none of them can improve his condition. Instead of that, each one sweats nervously, shaking with fear. Second Elder Yun looks at his son on the bed, then at the helpless healers, his temper nearly boiling over. Finally, he snaps and shouts angrily, driving all of them out of the room. Scarlet is frantic with worry, too. Second Elder Yun has no choice, however, to send someone for the truly skilled Master while continuing to examine Marcus's injuries himself. Right then, a subordinate reports that you've left the estate. Second Elder Yun's eyes darken instantly. He crippled my son and still dares to leave the estate. This little brat has some nerve. With that, he glances at the man beside him, who understands at once, bowing respectfully before turning to leave. Meanwhile, you've already arrived at Cloud Driver City's trading street. The most eye-catching spot on the whole street is the Cloud Vault Pavilion, Cloud Driver City's largest trading hub. You do not linger on the ground floor, where the crystal display cases are open to the general public, and then head straight up to the 2nd floor instead, because you realize that for something like martial weapons, the buyers who truly know their worth are the pavilion's own staff. Sure enough, the moment you reach the counter, a middle-aged man in fine silk robes greets you with a smile. You do not waste time either. You set the bundle straight on the counter. How much for these? He unwraps the cloth, and then sees the 5 martial weapons inside. And then when his eyes land on the silver short blade, they visibly light up. He then takes out a piece of black iron, used specifically to test a weapon's sharpness, testing each weapon one by one, growing more serious with every test. Finally, he speaks up. How does 2,000 gold coins sound? The price is actually already above market rate. However, you still shake your head. He hesitates for a moment, then raises it to 22. You still don't nod. You even make a move to gather the weapons back up, and then sure enough, he panics. He quickly stops you. 23, sir. That's truly my highest offer. Only then do you stop, a small smile tugging at your lips. Deal, but I want spirit stones. Not gold coins. He quickly brings out 230 spirit stones, packing them into a pouch and handing it to you. As you leave the counter, you're in a great mood. In just a short while, 15 spirit stones have turned into 230. Returns like this would have been unthinkable to you before. However, you're in no rush to head back to the Yun estate. Instead of that, you keep browsing through the pavilion. The Hammer Spirit has already told you the forge ability isn't limited to producing weapons. It can keep leveling up too. If you wish to raise the odds of forging high-grade martial weapons or even soul weapons, you'll need to add rarer special materials. And then to level up the forgeability itself, you'll also need to keep testing new materials constantly. So, for the better part of the next hour, you're practically buying as you walk, wherever there's suitable ore, wherever there's special metal that could aid the forging, with the Hammer Spirit chiming in every step of the way, while you handle the paying. By the time you're done browsing, your bag of materials has grown thick and heavy. However, most of those 230 spirit stones are already gone. Looking at the barely 2 pounds of material in your hands, you're able to help letting out a small sigh. Forging really is an expensive craft. However, just as you're about to leave, the Hammer Spirit all of a sudden speaks up again, its tone more serious than ever before. Master, you must buy that piece of iron. In the second crystal case on the right, you blink, then look right where it's pointing. It's a dark, lumpy chunk of iron, fist-sized, its surface streaked with rust, looking for all the world like a piece of junk metal thrown out on the roadside that no one would even bother to pick up. But the more useless it looks, the more you trust the warning. So you walk straight up and get right to it. How much for this iron, the wiry? Middle-aged man tending the counter breaks into an eager smile the moment you ask, already opening his mouth to boast. Sir, you really do have a sharp eye. This is no ordinary iron. It's a rare treasure-grade metal, and it's 10 gold coins. You cut him off flatly. The wiry man chokes on his own words, his smile freezing for a beat, as he tries to raise the price again. However, you're already turning to walk away, without a shred of hesitation. That's when he panics. He hurries to call you back. Fine. Fine, 10 gold coins it is. Please, sir, wait. Once the deal is done, you hold the rusty lump of iron, still looking nothing like something valuable. You're able to help but ask the hammer spirit silently, is this thing really something special? The hammer spirit answers instantly. Master, this is Silver Star Cloud iron. Forge with it, and then you're guaranteed at least one soul weapon. You stop dead in your tracks, your breathing turning heavier at once. At least one soul weapon. Those words alone carry a weight, almost too heavy to process. You look down at the rusted iron again, and then your entire perception of it shifts. That 10 gold coins you just spent doesn't even come close to what this thing is actually worth. You're already thinking about how to use it, to attempt to forge once you get back, when a voice all of a sudden rings out beside you, laced with mocking amusement. If it isn't the great son-in-law of the Yun family. Kai just picked up that bargain. Silver Star Cloud iron from the Cloud Vault Pavilion. Before you're able to even feel any deliberately raised, mocking laugh cuts in from the side. The one approaching is Derek Lin, the Lin family's second young master. The Yun family and the Lin family have long been bitter rivals in Cloud Driver City. Derek is notorious for being a spoiled brat who throws his weight around wherever he goes. Seeing the Yun family son-in-law alone here now, he immediately brings a few servants over to block your path, tossing around insults like, the family's kept husband and Yun family's trash. At the top of his voice, drawing curious stares from everyone nearby, pointing fingers your way. You do not even bother arguing with him, turning to leave. However, Derek isn't about to let you go so easily. The next second, one of his burly servants blocks your path, slamming into you hard enough to knock the material pouch off and then onto the ground just as you bend to pick it up. Derek stomps his foot down on the pouch first, then right in front of everyone, spreads his legs, and then looks down at you with a mocking sneer. Want it back? Crawl through my legs and I'll give it to you. The servants around him immediately join in. Roaring with laughter, you lift your head to look at him, your expression eerily calm. You reply flatly, since you enjoy showing yourself off so much. Why don't you just keep at it? The words barely finish before lightning surges. The next second, golden current erupts from beneath your feet, blasting Derek squarely between the legs. A single sharp burst of energy sends him flying, straight up into the air, crashing down hard in front of a distant counter, both hands clutching the source of unbearable pain. A piercing scream tears through the entire pavilion hall in a flash, leaving everyone stunned but immediately afterward. Several servants charge forward with furious shouts. The burly one in front swings a fist straight at you. You just tilt slightly to dodge it, then drive a lightning round backhand punch directly into his stomach, sending his hulking 6-foot frame flying backward. The rest close in on you at the same time. However, you do not even bother dodging. The power of the thunder. Physique surge through your legs, and then a single sweeping kick flattens them all at once, sending several crystal cases shattering along the way. Once it's done, you do not even pause for a step. You just bend down, pick up your pouch, dust it off, and hang it back on your waist. Then you toss a flat line to the pavilion staff. Get the damages from them. You turn and walk off, until your figure disappears through the doorway. Only then does the crowd snap back to reality, staring in shock at Derek and his servants, writhing on the ground, screaming. No one expected Derek, always so domineering, to be crushed by a single kick. And then even less expected that his servants, all at great perfection of the soul realm, couldn't even put up a decent fight against you. However, this whole ordeal is far from over. The moment you step out of the trading district, the sky quickly darkens what was already a dim, overcast day sinks fully into thunder and lightning, and then a light rain begins to fall. Immediately afterward, most of the pedestrians quickly you pick up your pace too, cutting through the familiar path in the woods, heading toward the Unistate. However, barely have you entered the forest when the hammer spirit's warning all of a sudden rings sharply in your ear. Careful, your heart lurches. However, your foot has already come down. A rune all of a sudden begins to glow in the mud beneath you. And then the next second, an explosive spirit talisman detonates. A terrifying blast instantly sends mud and debris flying. Even with your quick reflexes, the shockwave still rattles you enough to cough up blood on the spot. Before you're able to even catch your breath, several arrows tear through the rain from both sides of the forest, their cold glint nearly merging into one line. In the downpour, you push off the ground, instantly leaping into the air, barely dodging the first volley of arrows. However, the very instant you another cold arrow strikes with pinpoint precision, aimed straight at the blind spot left by your jump, clearly anticipated in advance. In that split second, you forcibly channel the thunder physique. Lightning surges violently in midair, forcing the arrow down out of the sky. The moment your feet touch ground, several masked men in black burst out from the trees. On both sides, each armed with blades, killing intent radiating off them. You do not hesitate for a second. You raise a hand and summon the divine hammer. The once tiny wooden hammer instantly swells, transforming into a 2-meter giant hammer. Resting in your grip, you sweep it in a wide arc right where you stand. Lightning erupts violently from the hammer's forcing head, the encircling attackers to stagger backward. You ask coldly who they are. The leader answers with just 4 words. Here to kill you before he even finishes. He's already charging in, soul power surging along his blade. Clearly no ordinary hired killer. However, he's picked the wrong target this time. Your eyes go cold. And then you immediately channel the Thunder Strike ability, the Thunder attribute. Power surging through the hammer triples instantly. You meet him head-on with a single swing. The instant hammer meets blade. Violent lightning explodes across the rain-soaked air. The leader in black doesn't even manage to finish his scream before the hammer's blow sends him flying. Blade and all, his breath fades before he's even hit the ground. The rest of the attackers' faces change color instantly. However, you give them no time to react. The next second, you charge forward, hammer raised, slamming it down on the 2 nearest attackers. 2 dull cracks sound out, and then both men are consumed by lightning energy. On the spot, their bodies collapsing entirely. The remaining attackers break entirely, turning to flee, but a rain-soaked forest at night is precisely where the divine hammer and then the thunder physique become most terrifying. Lightning flashes beneath your feet, and then your figure closes in like a phantom. 1 strike per man in just moments. The entire forest is stained with the scars of unleashed force. In the end, only the leader remains slumped against a tree, watching you approach step by step, terror written across his face. Only now does he finally break, begging for mercy over and over. Confessing the mastermind behind it all is none other than Second Elder Yun. Of the Yun family, you listen, then respond with a flat. I know he assumes, having said this, that he might live. However, the next second as you turn away, the hammer sweeps back in the same motion, crushing his chest instantly. Because you never once said you'd let him go. Your grandfather taught you long ago. In this world, there's no mercy for enemies. Anyone who means you harm can and should be struck down. The rain grows heavier. You stand amid the scattered traces of unleashed power, raising your eyes toward the Yun estate. Nothing left in your gaze but cold, killing intent. Since Second Elder Yun keeps striking to kill, you realize you'll settle this debt with him sooner or later. However, you also know you're able to kill him just not because you lack the will. However, because he's a sole sovereign realm cultivator. And then because this is still Yun family territory, if you struck now, you'd likely be the one to die first. So once you return to the estate, you make no move to announce anything. Nor do you go after Second Elder Yun right away. Instead of that, you slip back to your quarters without a word. For you, what matters most at this very moment is still growing stronger. You first wash away the rain and the traces of battle, then sit cross-legged in meditation for the better part of an hour. Thanks to the thunder physique, incredible recovery. The light wounds from the exploding rune heal almost instantly immediately afterward. You lay out the materials you bought from the Cloud Vault Pavilion. One by one on the table, you're ready to keep forging. However, this time luck is clearly not on your side. One after another, you hand over spirit, stones, and various materials to the divine hammer. Yet the first 5 forges all turn out the same. Nothing but low-grade martial weapons. Looking at the blades on the table, each one seems decent. However, their value is far below what the materials cost. Your mouth twitches. You're able to help wondering if the hammer spirit is scamming you. After all, if you'd skip the extra materials and then forge with spirit stones alone, you could have turned out over 10 more low-grade weapons by now. Then on the 6th try, something finally changes. As the divine hammer strikes one last time, a black blade covered in dark markings, its aura sharp and fierce, emerges before you. A high-grade martial weapon. You finally let out a small breath of relief. A high-grade weapon's worth is nowhere near a low-grade one's. More importantly, holding it in your hand feels entirely different. You give it a couple of swings, and then the blade cuts the air. You're able to feel the boost to your combat power at once. Still, you realize all of this is just the build-up. The real highlight has always been that last piece, the Silver Star Cloud Iron. The hammer spirit told you long ago, this material alone could forge at least one soul weapon. So you take a deep breath and then pour every bit of your remaining focus into it. This time, the moment the divine hammer strikes, the sound is entirely different from before. A piercing clang of metal echoes through the room, and then a hammer fire glow grows brighter, and then brighter. Even the soul force in the air begins to be drawn in. Only 15 minutes pass, but it feels like forever. Until finally, a burst of light blooms like fireworks. Along with it comes a heavy, fierce ripple of soul force. A silver spear slowly rises into view. Its shaft gleams silver-white, surrounded by golden patterns, with a bright platinum ring circling the shaft. The spearhead radiates a cold, piercing edge. Just one glance is enough to make your chest tighten, and then its name surfaces naturally in your mind. At that very moment, the silver soul spear, a spirit-grade soul weapon. The instant your hand closes around it, the soul force inside you rushes uncontrollably into the spear. A moment later, a clear bond forms in your heart, a weapon truly connected to you. The feeling is hard to describe, yet unmistakably real, as if the spear in your hand was always meant to be there. You're able to even instinctively sense the sharpness it holds. If unleashed at full power, forget the soul-gathering realm, even an ordinary soul sovereign might not be able to withstand this single thrust. However, before you're able to truly something changes again. The divine hammer, which had been hovering beside you, all of a sudden rushes back into your body. Immediately afterward, a scorching, violent energy explodes through every limb and bone, like being thrown directly into a furnace. Your flesh, tendons, and bones are all being forged alive in flame. You cry out in agony, clutching your stomach, thrashing on the floor like you've gone mad. Your reason is nearly wiped out in a flash by the pain and heat. That's when Celine's voice calls out. From beyond the door, she clearly heard the commotion. After calling your name a few times with no answer, she finally pushes the door open. She first sees the weapons on the table, then sees you on the floor, nearly out of your mind with pain. She tries to check on you. However, the instant her hand touches you, the rampaging soul force inside you knocks her back. When she looks up again, you stop thrashing. Your eyes are red-locked on her. This is not anymore the you she knows. You look more like a beast, pushed to the edge of madness by power and desire. The next second, you lunge at her. That night, only one thought remains in your mind. Release, release. Every last bit of the soul force, threatening to tear you apart from within. Everything else is swallowed whole by that burning heat. The next morning, sunlight slips through the window, and then begins to glow the torn scraps scattered across the floor. You sit on the ground, staring at the marks left among the shredded fabric. Then you remember Celine, wrapping herself in your robe, and then slipping away in silence. Not long ago, your scalp prickles. You'd already been dreading how to face her. However, the wreckage before makes any words feel pointless. And then of all times, that's when the hammer spirit pipes Congratulations, Master. You freeze for a moment only after looking inward. Do you understand why it's congratulating you? Because the soul force inside you is not anymore confined to your dantian. It now flows freely through every meridian in your body. Without thinking, you raise a hand and swing, and then the soul force blasts out through the air, punching a fist-sized crater into the wall. Soul force projection. This is the very mark of the soul sovereign realm, which means in a single night, you've leapt straight from the peak of the soul gathering realm into the soul sovereign realm. The hammer spirit then explains, the silver star. Cloud iron held an enormous store of natural soul energy. The divine hammer absorbed it all while forging the silver soul spear, then poured it all back into you at once. Upon returning to your body, which is what triggered last night's energy surge, you nearly lost control entirely. And then what happened between you and Celine in that chaos was at its core. More like a forced dual cultivation. Much of your excess soul force was transferred to her. So not only is she unharmed, she actually benefits from it. Knowing she's unharmed, you finally breathe easier. However, immediately afterward, emotions don't fade one bit. After all, it happened far too all of a sudden. And then far too absurdly for a moment. You've no idea how you'll even face Celine now. However, the hammer spirit quickly hands you another surprise. The divine hammer's forging ability has leveled up. This new ultimate forge mode not only feeds a portion of energy back to you every time it completes a weapon. However, more importantly, every soul weapon you forge now earns you 10 luck points. In other words, forge 6 more soul weapons. And then you're able to fully erase the debt 60 luck points from the first floor of the sacred tower. You realize exactly what that means. Last time, if it hadn't been for the debt left behind by the hammer's previous owner, far more than one treasure should have been yours. So going forward, forging remains your most important path. So you tidy yourself up a bit, and then prepare for another trip to the Cloud Vault Pavilion. For materials only to find, the Patriarch has already sent someone to summon you to the reception hall. Once you arrive, you realize trouble has come knocking again. In the middle of the hall stands a group from the Lin family. Two of them are carrying a stretcher, and then lying on it is none other than Derek Lin, whom you crippled with one kick yesterday. At this very moment, his legs can't even close together. His groin surrounded by bandages. His face is white as paper. The moment he sees you, he screams like a madman, desperate to crush you on the spot. Standing beside Derek is a middle-aged man in fine robes, his father Sterling Lin. His intentions are blunt first. He demands the Yun family compensate for the tavern, the shop, and 5,000 spirit stones. Second, he demands you be handed over to the Lin family for punishment. The moment these two demands are voiced, Grand Elder Yun and Second Elder Yun both frown at once. Grand Elder Yun states flatly on the spot, handing him over is impossible. However, the patriarch doesn't answer for you directly. Instead of that, he rises and walks over to you, turning the question back on you. How do you wish to handle this? You understand at once this isn't him abandoning you. He's handing the decision to you. So you say just one line, this started because of me? I'll handle it myself. The patriarch laughs at that, turns and walks away, leaving behind just two words. Show them out. The meaning couldn't be clearer. The Yun family isn't handing you over. Sterling Lin's face turns iron black. And then he's about to erupt. However, nobody expects what happens. You all of a sudden make your move. In a flash, you flash to the stretcher, and then grip Eric's throat with one hand, hauling him bodily into the air. Sterling Lin, shocked and furious, roars for you to stop, but you ignore him entirely. You just stare at Derek's face, twisted with terror, and say flatly, if you're that desperate to get in my way, let's start by making sure you're able to move in the slightest. Words barely finish before your grip tightens. A sharp crack sounds out, Derek's breath cuts off, and then he loses consciousness instantly. The Lin family isn't the only one stunned by this. Even the Yun clan members watching nearby are frozen in shock. No one expected you dare. Right in the Yun family hall in front of both families, to take down the Lin family's direct line. Second young master Sterling Lin entirely loses it. His sovereign aura erupts on the spot as he lunges forward. However, Grand Elder Yun is faster. He steps before your eyes and blasts Sterling with sheer force. The tension between the two families snaps to the breaking point. If this weren't Yun family territory, Sterling would likely be fighting to the death at this very moment, but in the end, gritting his teeth, he has no choice but to carry Derek's limp body away. Before he leaves, he snarls a warning. The Lin family will never let this go. Once they're gone, Grand Elder Yun turns to scold you for being reckless. What was originally just a dispute in compensation has now, with you publicly taking down Derek, become a total humiliation for the Lin family. This feud is sealed for good now. Second Elder Yun chimes in with sarcasm from the side, saying you flaunt your strength too openly, and then will fall for it eventually. However, you do not let him off easily either, replying flatly that he should worry about himself first, in case something happens to him. The next time he steps outside, the words land hard second. Elder Yun's face darkens instantly. Others might not catch the meaning. However, there's no way he doesn't. Every man he sent out last night never came back. Yet here you stand without a scratch. That alone is enough to fill him with deep suspicion. And then being needled by you like this only weighs on him more. Grand Elder Yun, meanwhile, gives you a final earnest warning. Stay in the estate for a while. The Lin family will not let this go. You agree out loud, but the moment you leave the hall, you head straight back to your room, grab the weapons you forged, and then walk right out of the Yun estate. Because to you, the Lin family's revenge is trouble. Sure. However, nothing is more important than getting stronger. And then fast if the Lin family really dares to come at you. That's a perfect chance to test your current strength. However, the Lin family clearly doesn't expect that you, having just taken down Derek in the hall, would dare step out again so soon. So this time, you do not run into a single obstacle along the way. You make it to the Cloud Vault Pavilion without a hitch, and then head straight up to the second floor. As usual, the middle-aged man in silk from yesterday begins to glow the moment he sees you. The reason is simple. The weapons you sold him yesterday, especially that top-tier one, sold for a fortune at a small auction that very night. He pocketed a hefty commission himself, so now seeing you again, with a bundle of weapons slung over your shoulder, he greets you like he's seeing a god of fortune. You do not waste words either. You get straight to the point, asking to see the best forging materials. The pavilion has the moment you ask. He immediately shows you up to the third floor. Very important person room, reserved for clients handling large transactions. Even the tea served isn't ordinary. It's spirit tea infused with pure soul force. You sip it unhurriedly, and before long, the man returns carrying 6 brocade boxes. Inside are 6 different rare metals, special spirit stones, and a milky white jade, each one radiating an extraordinary aura. Before you're able to even examine them closely, the hammer spirit speaks up first in your mind. Take all of these, so you ask, the price outright 30,000 gold coins. Even you feel your heart jump at that number. It's close to the Yun family's entire annual cultivation budget. Seeing your silence, the man briefly thinks the deal is falling through, already regretting the free pot of spirit tea he served. However, the very next second you unroll your bundle. Among the ordinary weapons inside, the standout piece is that dark-marked, razor-edged, high-grade blade the moment the man sees it. His eyes change entirely. High-grade martial weapons are already rare enough, and then high-grade swords are among the most sought-after. Weapons for cultivators. Its worth was never something a simple number could capture. So when you ask if this is enough, he barely hesitates before sealing the deal on the spot, afraid you might change your mind. As you take the 6 boxes, the hammer spirit's reminder echoes in your mind. These materials should forge at least 2 soul weapons. 2 soul weapons. 20 luck points plus the energy fed back from forging. Add it all up and 1 high-grade weapon. All of a sudden seems like nothing in the slightest. After securing the 6 precious materials, the man from Cloud Vault Pavilion even offers you a black gold VIP card unprompted. It grants discounts, not just at the Cloud Vault Pavilion, however, at every branch, and then affiliated business across the entire empire. You've no reason to refuse. After all, with the Divine Hammers forging on your side, you'll be doing plenty more business. With Cloud Vault Pavilion down the road, the manager sees you off warmly on the surface. However, suspicion is already brewing underneath. After all, here you're a mere-in-law of the Yun family, turning up with 1 high-quality weapon after another, then walking off with a huge haul of forging materials. No matter how you look at it, this isn't something an ordinary person could pull off. So he's nearly convinced that some formidable, hidden weapon forger must be standing behind you. However, none of that concerns you in the slightest. After leaving the Cloud Vault Pavilion, you head straight back to your quarters and then open all 6 boxes at once. Inside are 6 materials in total: 1 milky white jade, 2 special metals, and then 3 spirit stones of different attributes. The only one you recognize at a glance is the deep blue one, a water spirit stone. Attribute stones like this are already rare. Carrying pure water energy used for forging, they tend to produce weapons, leaning toward the water element. Without overthinking it, you raise a hand and let the Divine Hammer begin. It doesn't disappoint. The very first result is a spirit-grade soul weapon, the Water Ripple Spirit Sword. Deep blue patterns ripple across its blade, and then the moment it emerges, the room seems to grow a few degrees colder, the air carrying a faint, damp chill. You stare at the sword, your heart pounding. 30,000 gold coins for 6 materials. And then the very first one already delivers a soul weapon. Clearly, this deal was worth it. However, the results that follow aren't nearly as impressive. You forge 4 more times in a row. None of them produce low-grade weapons, again at least. But every single one comes out mid-grade. If you actually do the math, these 4 pieces combined might not even be worth what their materials originally cost in plain terms. Probably came out behind on all 4 of these forges. Still, it's not entirely a loss. You already got 1 soul weapon out of the batch. And then every time the forging finishes, the Divine Hammer feeds a portion of energy back to you. It's not dramatic. However, it's enough for you to clearly feel your soul growing bit by bit. Even judged purely by cultivation gains, these attempts weren't wasted. Still, the Hammer Spirit had clearly said, these 6 materials should yield at least 2 soul weapons, yet only 1 has come from the first 5. You're able to help suspecting it's just stringing you along. However, the Hammer Spirit isn't worried in the slightest. It simply reminds you that 1 material is still untouched. The plainest-looking piece, and then yet somehow the most striking, the milky white jade at first. You thought it just looked nice with an unusual aura. However, what the Hammer Spirit says next snaps you fully awake, because it reveals to you this is no ordinary jade. It's a spatial soul jade in value. The previous 5 materials combined don't even come close to a fraction of it. The only reason Cloud Vault Pavilion bundled it in with your order was that they'd mistaken it for an ordinary empty spirit jade, spatial soul jade. And then empty spirit jades share the same origin, and then look nearly identical. An ordinary soul cultivator has almost no way to tell them apart. However, a true spatial soul jade holds actual spatial attributes inside. Its value is on an entirely different level from ordinary materials. Hearing this, the way you look at the jade changes at once. And then, sure enough, this round of forging is unlike anything before it. The instant the Divine Hammer strikes, the space before your eyes visibly warps. Everything in the room seems to shudder along with it. What follows is a forging longer than any before it. A full hour passes, and then the Divine Hammer is still striking away. You're nearly dozing off from the weight, so you give up watching and then just sit cross-legged on the bed, circulating your cultivation technique. Settling into meditation, You stay like that from daylight, directly into the dead of night, until with the moon hanging high, a soft sound all of a sudden breaks the silence in the room. The moment you open your eyes, blinding light floods your entire field of vision. At the very same moment, thunder all of a sudden roars over Cloud River City. Thick thunderclouds press down silently, their scales so overwhelming, it startles nearly everyone in the city awake. Yet strangely though, thunder rumbles on for a long while. Not a single drop of rain falls. It arrives inexplicably and disappears, just as inexplicably dispersing again before long, leaving the entire city staring up in confusion. Meanwhile, at that very moment, the patriarch of the Yun family also witnesses the scene. Standing in the courtyard corridor, beside him stands a figure in a black robe, clearly delivering a report on your movements. The black robe man tells him, "You'd only just taken down Derek before heading straight back to the Vault Pavilion carrying a bundle for a second visit." At the news, a faint smile stirs in the patriarch's clouded eyes. He's quietly starting to believe. You might truly carry the very thing. He's been waiting for the black-robed man, then reports that another group has been driven into a place of certain death. The patriarch merely says lightly, "Have them start preparing over there," as if some long brewing scheme is finally the moment nearing to close in as he speaks. He casually pierces the wing of a canary in its cage, with a bamboo pin listening to its shrill cries, with an expression that stays perfectly calm. Meanwhile, in your room, your entire attention is now entirely seized by something else. Because this time, the divine hammer hasn't forged a blade, spear, or sword in the slightest. It's a milky white, crystal-clear jade ring. More importantly, the message the divine hammer sends you is just one-line heaven-tier soul weapon. The spatial soul ring in that instant. You nearly black out from shock. A heaven-tier soul weapon. Forget Cloud Driver City. Even across the entire Azure Empire, there might not be a second one like it. You practically lunge forward, snatching the ring into your afraid that 1 second's delay might make it disappear. The instant you touch it, the ring immediately responds. Ready for a blood bond? You react at once, slicing your finger and letting the blood drip onto it. As the blood is absorbed, a crystal-clear bond forms instantly, and then a flood of information pours into your mind. This spatial soul ring is, in truth, an extraordinarily rare spatial soul artifact. It holds its own pocket space inside, capable of storing all kinds of items, even living creatures on that fact alone. Its value is nearly impossible to measure, and then that's only its most basic ability. It also carries 3 soul techniques. First, space swap. Within a 30-meter range, you're able to instantly swap places with another living being, though each use requires a half-month cooldown. Second, void shroud, which lets you briefly pull yourself into the void, sustainable for roughly 15 minutes, as long as you do not draw on your soul force. Third, space shatter. Though this one won't truly activate until you reach the soul realm, having taken in all this information. You nearly forget to breathe. A spatial soul artifact is already beyond belief by itself, let alone one carrying 3 soul techniques as well. You'd only ever read about things like this in ancient texts, never expecting one to actually land in your hands. However, before you're able to fully savor the moment, the hammer spirit all of a sudden cuts in, its tone off just now. The spatial soul ring nearly drew down. A full thunder tribulation. Though most of the energy dispersed, some residue remains. Before it can even finish the warning, the divine hammer rushes back into your body. The next instant, that familiar, terrifying, burning sensation explodes inside you again. The feeling is identical to the night before, even worse. Every meridian in your body feels flooded with fire. Your flesh and bones, your very organs shaking violently. You cry out in pain on the spot, thrashing across the floor. However, this time there's no one left to share the burden of that explosive energy. You've no choice but to endure it alone. And then endure it you do for an entire night. Only when the sky begins to lighten does that burning sensation finally start to fade. You lie on the floor drenched in sweat.